Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer Gutman, Director of Social Strategy at Oktopost, and I'm here with my good friend and partner over at Spotler UK, Richard Wall.
Hi, Jen.
Hey, Richard. And the two of us, we actually have been having some pretty lengthy discussions on the new social media app you all may or may not have heard about yet called Clubhouse. And so, what we thought we would put together is a quick social media workshop geared towards Clubhouse and what's in it for brands, what we're learning so far, and how we see it at the moment best fitting into the B2B arena for marketers. And I think before we jump in and say everybody must be on Clubhouse, and anyone who's listening who is a marketer, we can all joke together that we tend to get really excited about new apps and try to grow our following really quickly and try to understand what it's all about and be the first. But I think with this one, it's unique, it's different, and so together we're going to explore it today. And of course, throughout the conversation, if you find anything interesting and you want to connect with either of us, feel free. So to kick it off, let's open the discussion. So Richard, there's been a lot of talk, right? Clubhouse. Maybe we'll start with what is it, and then we can kind of transition into what's in it for brands.
Absolutely, yeah. I think this is the first question we've got is what is it? That's an important part of the discussion. Keep it simple. It's an audio only social media network. Is probably that's the snippet. That's the it's you link up with people, but it's audio driven. You have your pictures in there, but there's no messaging function in there. There's no visuals. You're just people chatting. I heard it described as the world's largest open source podcast, which is quite an interesting way of looking at it. I think it's really fun. I think it's obviously built with a very different agenda in mind to all the other ones, and we will explore that as we go through the workshop. But I think it's a really fun place to connect with people, and like you say, it's getting a bit of traction now, so it was a good time to dive in and see where we think it might be going.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting, right? So it was developed by Silicon Valley entrepreneur Paul Davison, and ex-Google employee Rowan Seth. And I've heard that there's, different celebrities are joining, like Oprah Winfrey and Usher. So there really is a lot of interesting talk about it. And I think what makes this at the moment a little bit mysterious is the fact that it's exclusive invite only. So that also adds another layer of mysterious complexity, I would say,
Yeah.
because it's not necessarily yet an app for everyone. And I've heard it being kind of a hybrid, defined as like a hybrid of like part talkback radio, part conference call, and part house party app. So it's very interesting, right? So Richard, I think when I think about Clubhouse and who it's for, because it's exclusive invite only, and I think its origins and majority of people who are geeking out about it right now are like tech geeks like ourselves. But to sound cliche, I do think it is for everyone, and I think the core is really for people who want to learn, grow, and connect with others. And it's global, right? So it's you can really connect with anyone around the world. So with that, and because it's focused on learning from others and sharing experiences and creating those meaningful connections, what do you feel is in it for B2B brands at this time?
I think the first thing it's good for brands is it's just an absolute window into what people are talking about. Like it is very literally what people are talking about right now. There's all these things about doing customer research and understanding your market, and it's like there's no better place. Like you can gauge people's instinctive reactions to things in this kind of this unstructured chat format. And it's a way of connecting with, like you said, different people. I'd note at this point when we're recording it, because it was built in the US, it's US dominant, like it's expanding. But if you look at a lot of the rooms are set up in EST or Pacific time, something to bear in mind. Obviously, it's breaking out across where we are further east from America. But I think what's in it for brands is a new space. Like you say, like I think it's coming across quite clearly in this that even we don't really know what to make of it after a month or two. Like we haven't nailed down what it's for yet, and it becomes this really interesting sort of playground space for brands where you can like be an early adopter in a new, like we said, a very different style of technology. The thing that struck me is that it's not, between being invite only and being very, very topic focused, it's so different from your LinkedIn's and Twitter's. Like, it's not driven by who you know originally. Like, it starts off, you have to have an invite, and so there's a little bit of that, but then it's very much like recommending rooms based on topics. So I think it's making people think a lot more about how they connect, and that can only be a good thing ever, I think, never at all.
I agree. And I think so far what I've been dabbling with, there's kind of three areas that I'm seeing being interesting, at least for me when I'm dabbling inside of it. So the first, and I'm happy to share, is I see it as an interesting way to grow followers, but not necessarily on Clubhouse, but to perhaps drive a follower base towards your Instagram accounts or towards your LinkedIn profiles, or perhaps your Twitter following, or wherever you maybe want to grow a following. Because from what I'm gaining is every time I'm inside of a room, and we'll get to the lingo and understanding the lingo in a moment, but whenever I'm in a room and I'm speaking or I want to learn more, and let's say the conversation is coming to an end, I usually will either go to that person's profile to see where I can find more of them, and then give them a follow on the respective LinkedIn or Twitter, or be connected in another network. So where I see it becoming a powerful tool for B2B brands is growing followers, but again, on the networks in which they're niche. So right, for us, LinkedIn is kind of our gold treasure trove, for lead generation, and right, our social media strategy. So I see that as one interesting way. Another thought, and I know we'll talk on this kind of on the topic of like what not to use it for. But an interesting discussion I was hearing about as well for brands is actually for sales teams, not to sell necessarily, right, hard pitching, but to actually open up rooms to get relevant stakeholders involved in the meeting should they have any questions throughout the sales cycle, that they don't necessarily need to schedule like a scheduled Zoom, but it's like, okay, they're, this team is meeting on Clubhouse. I thought that was interesting. Not sure if that will go all the way, but I thought it was interesting. And then the third thing, I think what's interesting for B2B brands and where Clubhouse can really have some leverage is when you kind of look at the evolution of Twitter, and especially in 2020, with there was this whole push that the networks were fighting against fake news, and how do you tell if it's a bot or a person, or how do you tell if this news piece is real, or this content is good, bad, legit. I think that Clubhouse can be an interesting way to kind of sift through that right now, because it is invite only and it is focused on a very people to people connection. Not saying bots can't be involved in, coming on to Clubhouse at some point, but I do think it eliminates a lot of the noise that a lot of us have been complaining about as marketers, trying to break through. So those are kind of my three where I see brands could be interesting playing on the playground with it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the theory about audio bots. That's scary but intriguing in equal. But yeah, I think because it's right now, and the other thing is there isn't a recording function built in. It's very much in the moment. You can't have that perfectly crafted thing. It does have to be people's very much like immediate reactions to something, or immediate thoughts. And the first thing I found actually is that it's perfectly okay to go on there with a half-formed thought, because a lot of these rooms with 30 or 40 people on, you can sort of start something, and then it does drive the discussion, where there's, like in the traditional, like, go to a webinar or Zoom or whatever you use for your meetings, there is this kind of structure where you are the speaking authority and everyone else is listening, and the Clubhouse has completely got rid of that. Like you have moderators in the room. They're not called leaders. They are very much just sort of guiding the conversation rather than dominating it. I think I've lost where I was going with that thought, but I think it makes it much more organic, and it is easy for people to chip in. Like, we try all sorts of things to get people to engage on webinars, and it doesn't necessarily work very well. But Clubhouse, it's engagement first, if you want to coin a buzz term.
Yeah. And I think, you and I were speaking before we kind of entered the workshop, around how internal teams can use it as well, and from a B2B brand space. And I think that's also something that's worth mentioning. So the idea that I had in terms of the sales team driving conversations with their prospects or customers or whoever it may be, and kind of giving the ability to open it up to more people in the company than maybe the salesperson has their email. Or for example, I know here at Oktopost, we do quarterly all hands on meetings. So Clubhouse could be a fun new hip way to host those. And I think so the internal arena there. And I remember you shared something about employee advocacy, right?
Yeah, I think this is the logical entry point, if you are, like the way for brands to think about it. If you've already got an employee advocacy program on, like if you're happy with for employees to be the main voice rather than your sort of corporate LinkedIn or Twitter channels, then Clubhouse can absolutely work for you. I've not seen, I mean, there's no reason you couldn't, put a logo in your profile picture or have your profile as the logo, but I think that would be a turn off for a lot of people.
Which I think leads us into our next kind of also like what it's not good for. Like we can kind of throw that in, right? So it's like great for employee advocacy and for employees to do maybe a little bit of casual, subtle art form social selling, right? But there's a whole art form to this, right? You shouldn't be so pitchy. You don't want to come across strong salesy in a conversation in a room. But I do think it's interesting to speak about kind of that aspect of how when you're doing social selling, it's all about making meaningful connections. And there's been so much talk over this past year, be authentic, and be transparent and empathetic. And I think it's all about a people to people connection. And I do think Clubhouse, for what it's worth, with this kind of everybody speaking in a room and the goal is to have everybody be heard, I do think it really is playing on that people to people connection, which at the end of the day, that is ultimately what sales and marketing is all about.
It is. And I think the fact that you can't have the conversations you can't have sort of one-to-one conversations in the app, that you do have to follow through on someone's, I think it's Instagram and Twitter, you can link in your bios at the moment. Hopefully they'll add LinkedIn. And if they do, that'll be a big sign that they're thinking about how brands can wield it as well. As you say, LinkedIn is probably still the go-to brand for go-to social network for brands. Like LinkedIn, it's so easy to fire off a connection based on nothing, but because you have to engage with someone on Clubhouse, go to their bio, find them on Twitter, they message them, say, "Oh, hey, do you remember we were chatting about this?" Like, you have to work a little bit harder for the connection, but I think that's going to make it more valuable. That you will, if you take the time, you take the time to do it and put the effort in, and you actually get a lot more out of it. So it's pushing a different kind of connection, which I think is really good. Yeah, what you said about sales pitches, I was in one room where a sales pitch was allowed, and that was because it was a very specific answer to a question that one speaker had asked. I think it was about how to plug other external audio in to Clubhouse, because you can do it. And this was a guy that sold the little iPhone connectors. I can't remember what they're called, but the connector that would let you do that. And the moderator said, "Okay, because it was an answer to the question, I'm gonna let you do that. But just to remind everyone, the ground rules of the room, don't do sales pitches." Like it is very ingrained into that. And I think people come in, and obviously when you start, I think, when I started, it took me a week to have the nerve to say anything in any room, even like an email marketing room, which is where I spend 90% of my life. You don't want to assume you're the expert even there. But I think people do want to engage. They're just waiting for the right moment. If you force them into a situation where they have to just listen and there's nothing for them to pipe up out, they'll switch off, they'll disappear and go to another room. So you say, people are creating these things left, right, and center, as they should be, as they build this thing and work out their way around it.
Absolutely. And I think that's what I love so far about Clubhouse, that you don't have to speak if you don't want to. So if you're an introvert, it's a great app, because you can listen and you can learn, but you're not forced to necessarily participate other than joining the room and just listening in. But that does lead me, that I think would be interesting, right, to talk about on this workshop, and an important point to bring up is that there is ongoing new Clubhouse lingo, if you will, that I'm
your
still
favorite
myself
topic.
learning. Yeah, it really is my favorite topic, because at the end of the day, right, we're all working from home, and the office life as we know it has completely changed. And I have to say, I've been a sucker for corporate lingo since I've graduated and started my first job. I love warm handovers. I absolutely love all of that language, that when you're speaking in a corporate conference room, the things that just make you feel really good about yourself. And that's all been thrown out the window. So you're kind of like, okay, well, now I have to be more casual. And how does this all work? And so what's interesting, when I started laughing when I'm listening in to different Clubhouse rooms, is that there is a lingo, right? So let's dissect a little bit on the workshop, some of the lingo on Clubhouse, because I think for anyone listening who isn't yet on Clubhouse or is like thinking to themselves, what on earth is Clubhouse? What are they talking about? I'm going to throw out some lingo. So there's a few different roles on Clubhouse. There's the audience, the moderator, and the speaker. Now, the audience, right? Those are people who are listening in. They're on mute in a room. We'll get to what that means in a moment, but they do not speak. They are listening. Audience. Then you have the moderator, and I like to think of the moderators as admins of the rooms. So the moderators, they have usually a little green star next to their name, and they can bring people on over to the stage. We'll get into what that means in a moment. They can give people speaking rights, and they usually are the ones who have set up the room. And again, their goal is to make sure that everybody gets a fair chance to speak. And then we head into the speakers. So these are the people who are participating in the room and in the discussion. They're not the moderators. They don't have the same full moderator rights, but they have a voice. They're unmuted and they are able to speak. So with that, Richard, am I missing any of the roles there? Have you?
No, that's the thing. I think
there's more.
No, I think that's the beauty of it. It is quite simple. This is why it's the best moment to dive in. It's like if you wait too long before you get sort of mass adoption, there could be loads more features. I think playing in it now, that you say, you got people listening, people are speaking, and someone sort of steering the ship. That's all you need to have.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So then it's like there's right. So clubs, right? We talk about Clubhouse. What is this? So the clubs are basically the groups that you can follow or be notified when some discussion in that club is taking place. And something that I've been forewarned about by other Clubhouse enthusiasts is to make sure the people that you're following, like, be very selective about who you follow, because apparently that is how your hallway when you first enter the app, which suggests all of the different topics and rooms or clubs that you should be following or engaging with, that's actually, they go based off of who you're already following to suggest more relevant rooms and topics of discussion. So be very particular if you have certain interests of who you follow. And then there's a party hat. I want to bring this up because so the party hat, it's the emoji that basically this emoji appears next to your name to let people know that you're new to the app. It appears only in the first 7 days. So I've been on a few weeks. I think you've been about a month or two, right? A month or two you've been on. Yeah. So I don't think we have party hats anymore. Which is kind of cool, but also I know, right? So you don't always have to feel like you should be an expert, especially if you have that party hat next to your name, right? You get a little bit of slack.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if do you have P plates on cars where you are for people who've just passed their driving test? Or is that just a UK thing?
I think that's just a UK.
Okay, well, okay, for non-UK listeners, you get L plates when you're learning, then you pass your test, and then you can optionally have P plates. I think it stands for passed, or presumably. And then it's like that. It's a little logo. It's like, take it easy on me. I don't entirely know what I'm doing. And I think that's how you got to use the party hat. A little like, yeah, it's easy to be self-conscious, but something people have said in these rooms and like in Clubhouse 101 type things that I've been on, like, if you're new, that's the time to engage in it, because if you make a mistake, they'll go, oh, don't worry, they're new, it's fine. They're still learning. So, celebrate the party hat for one, enjoy it and use that
celebrate that party hat. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
There are two other kind of Clubhouse lingo phrases that I want to bring up. So if you're thinking about moderating a room or opening a room, or when you're participating in a room, what you hear and what they mean. So it's the first time when I was on Clubhouse that I ever heard the acronym PTR. I have never heard that before. I'm a huge fan of acronyms, but I'd never heard that. So it basically means pull to refresh. And when you PTR or pull to refresh, you're essentially refreshing the room that you're in. And so as a moderator, the art of it is that you're able to go ahead and see anyone new who has joined the room, any new updates that have come through. So you should do that pretty frequently throughout your discussion. And the other phrase that this was my corporate lingo wild side coming through, that I love saying and I love using, but it's called resetting the room. And basically, resetting the room is the art of reintroducing the speakers and the topic for anyone who might be joining the room midway, right? So in Clubhouse, you can enter the room at any time and you can leave the room at any time, which makes it a little bit interesting because there's not necessarily there's a start time, but you can enter in whenever you wish. So with that, it's best practice to reset the room the first time 10 minutes in, and then after that about every 30 minutes to an hour if the discussion's continuing. But you basically want to reset the room and make sure everybody knows what everybody's talking about. So I thought that was a cool new phrase that we'll probably be hearing a lot of, resetting the room.
Yeah, it'll probably make it into general corporate lingo soon enough as well. But yeah, I've seen a few. There are rooms around that are just sort of chat rooms, like a general chat. I think the topic is, then you veer off into all kinds of different topics. I've talked about woodwork. I've talked about the situation in Syria. I've talked about all kinds of things off the back of rooms. So yeah, having an established way to gently steer the conversation. But I think you're right to call it an art, because if a topic's running, then it's obviously some people are interested in. And as the moderator, you don't want to kill off that conversation. Yeah. But you know, if you are talking about social media and it veers off into politics too deep, you want to say, okay, hang on, let's keep this a little bit more focused, just to, like you say, for new people coming in to get what it says on the tin when they join.
Exactly. So I'm very curious to see where this is going to go. There's a lot of kind of, in the social media circles, I think there's a lot of debate around if this is a trend, if this is something that, because we've all been so secluded and working from home and with so much technology around us and sick of screens, that is this something that's a fad that right now everybody's on board with? Because let's face it, what else do we have to do while we're sitting at home waiting out the pandemic? Yeah. Or is this something that's really going to catch on? Is this something that's going to be big? And I think, you know, it's hard to say. And again, I'm not one to sit here and say everybody should be on Clubhouse and you should be adding this ASAP to your social strategy, because again, I think that would do a disservice to kind of, right, the understanding where we are today with it. But I can say that if we think back to the history of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and you think back to the people today who have massive followings, when you ask them how they were able to gain so many followers, or what their tactic was to grow their followers quite nicely and where they are today, many will tell you that they were actually early adopters. So I think that is the one cool thing right now to think about as a marketer or as an influencer or as anybody who is looking to kind of be on the bandwagon of starting off, and the first to do it. But I think that is another benefit to think about, that if this app does take off, then, and we're in it from the beginning.
Yeah, you'll run the space. Everyone's, if when you're the only one on it, you're running the entire space, and then if it takes off, everyone else is going, oh come on, we need to catch up. Yeah, and you can drive it, and yeah, as it continues to evolve, if you were there from the start, you'll kind of follow the evolution, understand it a bit more.
Exactly.
And like we say, like have the basics down, so when they add more features on there, you already know what you're doing, and you can say, oh yeah, okay, we don't need this extra bit or whatever it is they've added on, because I'm just going to stick to doing the basics, and
I'm curious,
people will follow it.
I'm curious because when you look at Facebook, when you look at the evolution of like Facebook, for example, it started off right in colleges for college students to connect. There was a wall and people would write to each other on this wall, and there wasn't a space for businesses. And now today it's very business dominated. So in my head, if you look at how most of the social networks have evolved, perhaps one day there will be on Clubhouse the ability to have some sort of company Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Room page.
But yeah, there's two ways you can see it going. You could be like Spotify, having ads jumped in. Like if you want to run a room that's over an hour, you have to accept an ad break at 20 minutes in, maybe. Or the other thing that might be quite interesting is letting brands sponsor rooms. You know, like call it, the Coca-Cola room, the IBM room, whichever brands.
That could be cool, and
especially give them like a priority space.
Yeah, that could be real interesting. So we'll have to keep our eye out for that. And so with that, I want to be conscious of time. And this is our quick little kind of discussion. This is, we Richard and I think we have spoken every day since
Since we joined the app. Yes.
just like dive into this. So we'll be doing more of these. And if you guys, if anyone out there listening needs somebody to talk Clubhouse with, feel free to connect with myself or Richard. You can reach me at Jen at oktopost.com, or on Clubhouse at Jen Gutman. So that's JenGutman. And Richard, I know you have a fun story behind your Clubhouse name, but how can we reach you if we want to really talk Clubhouse?
Great. Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, all those other ones. Where my email address is richard.wall, WALL, at spotler.co.uk. It's SPOTLER. My Clubhouse name is Brick in the Wall. It's a dual thing. Firstly, it's the one nickname from school that I could actually happily put up with. I imagine most people can guess what the others were in sort of tone and terms, and it's a subtle Pink Floyd reference as well for the classic rock fan. So it serves a dual purpose.
Amazing. Richard, thanks for joining me. And I have to give a little shout out, and this is a little fun fact for anyone listening, but we had actually recorded this session a day ago. And I'm sure somebody could relate, especially right now. There's a pretty viral Zoom going around with cats showing up on Zoom and kids entering in the back room. So I had actually filmed this, and Richard has been such a good sport. I had filmed this, and I had actually somehow managed to have the camera while it was filming. I looked like my grandmother on Zoom, when the camera only gets half the face. So Richard,
on the top of the forehead.
Exactly. Richard, thank you so much. This is our re-recording, and I really appreciate it. And thank you so much. I feel hopefully someone got a good laugh from that.
I hope so. I think we've all been there. It's nice to know that we're not the only ones.
Cool. So
I've enjoyed it a lot.
We'll see you again, and we'll talk more Clubhouse.
Bye for now.
Bye.